Clint Eastwood. The very name drips with a certain mystique, conjuring images of dusty frontier towns and shadowy city streets. He has stood at the pinnacle of the entertainment world for decades, beloved by some for his raw, no-nonsense style, and feared by others for the cold intensity he brings to even the simplest words. Yet, beneath that stoic exterior, beneath the accolades and applause, lies a hidden truth that was almost erased from Hollywood's collective memory. Today, that secret is about to explode into the public spotlight, carrying with it the power to rewrite everything you thought you knew about this legendary actor. Before the world came to know him as the stone-faced gunslinger who redefined the Western genre, Clint Eastwood led a life cloaked in deep obscurity. He was not born in a luxury or privilege. In fact, he grew up in an era marked by uncertainty, a post-Depression America that demanded resilience and grit from its youth. Some of his earliest memories were shaped by a sense of restless wandering, moving from town to town, following the flicker of opportunity wherever it presented itself. That relentless push for survival became a defining trait of the man who would later become one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. Many have heard the story of how a young Clint Eastwood survived a harrowing plane incident while serving in the military. Fewer know how that brush with mortality planted the first seeds of his unstoppable drive. In interviews, he would downplay its significance, flashing that trademark squint and dismissing it as a youthful misadventure. But behind closed doors, the experience lodged itself in his mind like an echoing thunderclap, a brutal reminder that life was fleeting and dreams could slip away in a single moment. From that day forward, he vowed never to allow fear to rob him of his ambition. He arrived in Hollywood on shaky footing. The studios, locked in their traditional ways, were not quite sure what to make of him. He was too tall, too quiet, too unconventional, the kind of actor who did not fit neatly into the leading man mold of the 1950s. Casting agents urged him to tweak his persona, speak more, adopt a polished smile, soften his glare. But Eastwood refused to play the game. He believed that authenticity, however unusual, was his greatest weapon. Although he landed a few minor roles in television and film, Clint Eastwood's true ascendancy began when he was chosen to star in a series that would soon become an international phenomenon. Rawhide was a Western television show that gained traction at a time when America was captivated by tales of the Old West. The role gave Eastwood a platform to sharpen his craft, learning the nuances of the genre. Yet, he quickly realized that television alone would not satisfy his aspirations. He had set his sights on the silver screen, on a dream that demanded grander storytelling and far more significant risks. A tectonic shift occurred when an Italian director named Sergio Leone recognized something in Eastwood that no Hollywood executive had been able to see. In Eastwood's steely gaze, Leone saw the perfect anti-hero for a series of unconventional westerns that would come to be known as the Dollars Trilogy. When A Fistful of Dollars premiered, critics were initially horrified by its unapologetic violence, its stark moral ambiguity, and Eastwood's near-silent portrayal of the man with no name. But audiences were mesmerized. Here was a western unlike anything they had ever encountered, a savage cinematic storm that tore through the polished illusions of the old Hollywood approach. And at the center of it was Clint Eastwood, implacable, merciless, an icon in the making. The success of the trilogy turned Eastwood into a star, commanding the attention of major American studios. It also sparked an incredible transformation. The man who had once been overlooked by producers in his own country returned as a renegade hero, a trailblazer who ushered in a new style of Western that was gritty, morally complex, and shockingly real. Critics might have dismissed him as an odd phenomenon, but the public was enthralled. They craved more of that quiet, dangerous magnetism, more of that raw, simmering tension that only Eastwood seemed able to deliver. Yet with fame came demands. Audiences and producers alike wanted him to remain the brooding outlaw forever, trapping him in a cycle of repetitive roles. Clint Eastwood bristled at this. Unbeknownst to the public, he had a bold plan brewing in the back of his mind, one that would allow him to seize creative control and drive his career in unexpected directions. He never wanted to be just another actor on a studio contract. He aimed for something bigger, a seat in the director's chair and the freedom to shape his own narratives. The turning point came with Play Misty for Me, Eastwood's directorial debut. It was a psychological thriller that showcased a far different side of his artistic sensibilities. The film's unsettling story of obsession and danger rattled viewers, but it also declared in no uncertain terms that Clint Eastwood was more than a gunslinger. He was a multifaceted storyteller, capable of delving into the deepest corners of human emotion. From that moment on, he charted his own path, taking roles that challenged him and directing films that explored controversial and complex themes. But behind the scenes, a hidden drama raged. Eastwood was known for his fierce independence, a trait that often clashed with Hollywood's hierarchical systems. High-level studio executives whispered about his alleged stubbornness, about how he would reject proposals that did not align with his vision, how he demanded final cut on nearly every project he touched. Some said he was an unstoppable force, determined to push boundaries, even if it placed him at odds with the establishment. Yet, that same rebel spirit propelled him to extraordinary success, eventually earning him accolades as both actor and director. During the production of Dirty Harry, Eastwood found himself under intense scrutiny. The role of a cop who was willing to break the rules to bring criminals to justice set off controversies and debates about the film's moral implications. Some critics labeled it dangerously provocative, while others hailed it as a raw depiction of a city spiraling into lawlessness. Through it all, Eastwood maintained a resolute stance, insisting that the film was an exploration of extremes, a reflection of society's darker elements. The public, however, devoured it, vaulting Eastwood to a new level of popularity. The line, "Do you feel lucky?" became an anthem for a generation seeking a fresh kind of cinematic hero. Yet, even as he dominated the spotlight, Eastwood wrestled with shadows. Friends and colleagues noted an intense drive within him, a relentless desire not just to succeed, but to master every detail of his craft. He often spent long hours on set, poring over the script, analyzing camera angles, questioning the pacing of scenes. He was famed for his efficiency. Rumor had it he would do just a few takes of every shot, trusting his cast and crew to deliver their best. And though some found his methods Spartan, others praised him for his clarity of vision. But the real mystery lay behind that stoic exterior, the personal cost of maintaining such a high standard of control. Industry insiders tell tales of long nights when he would barricade himself with notes and storyboards, refusing to rest until he had solved every narrative puzzle. Tension rose to a crescendo during certain productions, with whispers of on-set disagreements that verged on the explosive. Yet, as soon as the cameras rolled, Eastwood appeared collected and calm, guiding the process with a disarming ease that belied the pressure simmering beneath the surface. One project above, all tested his resolve. The outlaw Josie Wales was more than just another Western. It was a risky endeavor that explored themes of vengeance, redemption, and the brutality of war in a way that felt unexpectedly personal. Some suspected that Eastwood saw a reflection of his own internal battles in the tragic figure of Josie Wales, a man forced to confront the violence he had sown. Critics lauded the film for its depth, praising Eastwood's ability to take the Western genre and infuse it with a moral complexity rarely seen before. What they could not know was that he had poured his entire soul into it, grappling with the very real question of how violence, even on screen, affects the psyche of those who enact it. Despite the accolades, there were rumors that Eastwood planned to step away from acting altogether, focusing solely on directing to gain even greater creative freedom. Hollywood trembled at the possibility. Executives scrambled to persuade him otherwise, throwing lucrative offers in his direction. Some claimed that he brushed them off with an indifferent shrug, only to surprise them later by accepting a project that seemed entirely against type. It was during this period that he proved the full extent of his unpredictability, flipping between the comfortable territory of Westerns and the emotional rawness of dramas that challenged the audience's deepest feelings. The true tipping point arrived when he took on Unforgiven. By then, he was a seasoned veteran, and many believed he might settle into the comfort of his established persona. But he shocked viewers with a somber meditation on violence and redemption, a film that peeled back the layers of the Western myth he had helped create. This was not the brazen gunslinger of his youth, nor the taciturn anti-hero outsmarting outlaws with a menacing glare. This was a vulnerable, haunted figure wrestling with ghosts from the past. The film earned Eastwood some of the highest critical praise of his career, winning multiple awards and signaling a grand transformation in his creative ethos. Yet, behind the triumphant headlines, few realized that Eastwood had reached a personal crossroads. He had long been balancing the pressures of stardom, the obligations of directing, and the internal conflicts that came from constantly being in the public eye. People close to him speak of moments when he toyed with the idea of walking away from Hollywood for good, building a life far from the glamour and scrutiny. If asked, he would dodge the topic, offering only a vague comment that there was more to life than movies. But the truth was far more dramatic. He had grown weary of the endless battles with studio heads, the relentless scheduling demands, and the knowledge that success or failure would ultimately be pinned to his name alone. The moment of crisis was said to have occurred during a project that was plagued by delays and artistic disagreements. Close confidants claim he questioned whether the audience truly understood his vision, whether all the years of pushing boundaries had made a difference or merely produced controversy. He even confided, in hushed tones, that continuing might risk tarnishing the very legacy he had spent decades building. If he could not create art with sincerity, he saw no reason to remain under the harsh lights of the set. But fate had other ideas, and destiny beckoned with yet another unexpected twist. A script arrived that some found laughably out of his comfort zone. It was The Bridges of Madison County, a romantic drama centered on longing and regret, far removed from the high-stakes conflicts of the westerns and action films that built his reputation. Few believed Eastwood would take it on, let alone star in it. To the surprise of many, he not only accepted, but poured his entire being into the project. In doing so, he delivered a performance of heartbreaking vulnerability, revealing emotional depths that viewers had never associated with him before. The film's quiet, reflective tone was a stark contrast to the guns and grit he had grown synonymous with. Critics were stunned, audiences were moved, and a new chapter in Eastwood's career was forged, one that proved he could transcend any genre he touched. After that point, it was as though a dam had broken. No longer content to be pigeonholed, Eastwood explored an array of stories and settings. He tackled music biopics, war dramas, mysteries, even spiritual explorations. Through it all, his fingerprints, those careful strokes of craftsmanship, that intense focus on character over spectacle, remained evident. He was still the same driven artist, but now unleashed to chart his path freely. Fans might still see him as the hard-edged cowboy or the relentless cop, but Eastwood refused to be anchored by his own legend. At the same time, he cultivated a reputation for mentoring up-and-coming talent. Younger actors who found themselves cast in his films spoke of the near-mythic presence he brought onto the set, the calm in his voice that demanded respect without raising its volume. He guided them through scenes with minimal fuss, believing that the camera should capture truth, not contrived performances. Some compared him to an old-world philosopher, wise from a lifetime of storytelling, sharing tidbits of wisdom on everything from framing a shot to navigating the madness of celebrity. Yet, behind his measured composure, there always lingered a trace of that wild streak, the same rebellious energy that propelled him out of obscurity decades earlier. But here is where we reach the eye of the storm, the core of the hidden drama that almost tore his legacy apart. According to certain accounts, Eastwood had been approached by a powerful studio conglomerate to helm a grand-scale production that promised to be one of the biggest films of the decade. The budget ran into the hundreds of millions, the script was a tightly guarded secret, and the producers insisted that only Clint Eastwood could deliver the gravitas needed. On the surface, it seemed like a perfect match, another jewel in the crown of a Hollywood titan. Yet, Eastwood hesitated, plagued by doubts. Despite the glitz and allure, The project demanded compromises that he found artistically unacceptable. Rumor has it the script clashed with his convictions, pushing a narrative he believed would ring hollow for the audience. Behind closed doors, negotiations grew tense. High-level executives tried to sweeten the deal, offering Eastwood unprecedented creative latitude in exchange for his involvement. But at its core, the script remained something he could not fully believe in. Those who were present during the talks claimed that Eastwood reached a point of exasperation, telling the studio heads in no uncertain terms that his days of simply cashing in on spectacle were over. He had built a reputation on authenticity, on stories that carried a pulse of truth beneath the surface. If that truth was absent, no amount of money or star power could sway him. Then, in a dramatic twist worthy of a Hollywood screenplay, Eastwood vanished from the project. One day he was in heated discussions with the studio, the next he was on a private retreat in a remote area. The press, smelling scandal, spun wild theories. Some claimed he had quarreled with an influential producer, others whispered about a health crisis. But the real story was simpler and, in many ways, more impactful. He refused to compromise, and the studio refused to give him complete creative control. That stalemate nearly shattered the production, costing millions. A wave of panic rippled through the industry, with insiders blaming Eastwood for what they called an ego-driven exit. Yet, fans who knew his legacy suspected there was more to the story. Although the studio replaced him and pushed forward, the film that emerged felt soulless to many, lacking the poignant spark that Eastwood might have brought. When it debuted, it floundered, receiving lukewarm reviews and failing to recoup its massive budget. Meanwhile, Eastwood moved on to an entirely different project, one with a smaller budget, but a script that resonated deeply with him. The final product earned critical acclaim, garnering praise for its understated storytelling and emotional weight. Once again, he had proven that genuine passion outshines bloated spectacle. In the aftermath, a network of secret documents began circulating among certain Hollywood circles, detailing the behind-the-scenes friction that had derailed the high-profile production. A few lines within those documents referenced Eastwood's unwavering stance, a quiet but powerful refusal to compromise his artistry. The revelations ignited discussions among industry veterans, with some siding with the studios, declaring Eastwood an anachronism who could not adapt to modern, blockbuster-driven filmmaking. Others hailed him as a guardian of cinematic integrity, a man too principled to bow to the demands of an industry often obsessed with quick profits over lasting substance. It is this unwavering devotion to authenticity that fuels the legend of Clint Eastwood. While rumors come and go, the truth that emerges time and again is that he has never been driven solely by fame or fortune. He was shaped by an era in which survival and self-reliance were the keys to forging a future. He honed his craft in the crucible of spaghetti westerns and rose to prominence on the back of daring choices and creative risks. With each project he accepted or declined, he weaved a tapestry of integrity and rebellion, forging a career that evolved beyond the confines of mere acting. From the stoic gunfighter who transformed the Western genre to the introspective director who exposed raw truths in unexpected stories, Eastwood has left an indelible mark on cinema. Now, as he stands in an age when most would have long since hung up their hats, his creative spark remains unquenchable. The question looming over Hollywood is, what final revelation might he still have in store? What hidden script or transformative role awaits a man who has broken free from every cage the industry tried to lock him in? In hushed tones, insiders speak of a possible self-reflective piece, a film that would serve as a grand summation of his entire journey, merging the grit of his early westerns with the emotional depth of his later dramas. Whether that comes to pass remains uncertain, but the idea alone is enough to send waves of anticipation across the cinematic landscape. In the end, the hidden drama of Clint Eastwood's life is not one of outlandish scandal or secret conspiracy, but of steadfast refusal to be molded into anything other than his authentic self. He has defied expectations, angered corporate giants, and walked away from colossal paydays, all for the sake of preserving a personal code that he carved into the bedrock of his soul. That code remains the wellspring of his legacy, fueling an artistry that, year after year, continues to captivate audiences worldwide. This is the story Hollywood hoped you would never learn. The behind-the-curtain look at the battles Eastwood waged in the name of creative truth, the near-mythic standoffs with powerful studios, and the unwavering dedication to telling stories on his own terms. It is a story of grit, integrity, and self-determination that resonates now more than ever, reminding us that even in a world of compromise, true visionaries can still forge their own path if they are willing to stake everything on their convictions. Clint Eastwood's secret was never a salacious scandal or a skeleton in the closet. It was something far more profound, an unbreakable promise to himself that, come triumph or disaster, he would remain the author of his own destiny. And with that promise, he changed the face of cinema, transforming it from within, one uncompromising decision at a time.